Okay, at this point we have our setup routine almost finished. We have it so that from our instance class we can send our data over to it and display it in the combo boxes. Now we just have to uh, put it in a way so that we can get any changes that were made. If somebody changes the COM port and the baud rate and clicks the OK button, so that we can get that information into our instance class. In order to do that, what you do is you go into serial port setup dialog, and you basically make those values, the port name and the data rate, or I'm sorry, the baud rate, available as properties. Now, to make a property is very simple. It's very similar to creating a method, except you don't have any parentheses at the end. So what you do is you make public. You have to declare what type of value is getting passed between the two. So for example, we're going to do port name right now. So that is a string. That's the value type that is getting sent back. And let's call this port name. This is just, we're going to access this using port name. And in this, all we have to do now, in order to make this available, we're going to be in our instance class. We're going to go out to our serial port setup dialog and ask for the information. So in other words, from our instance class, we're going to try and get the information. So that's how I kind of keep the two, between the get and the set apart. So all you do is you type get. You put up a little bracket thing there, and we just need to return this dot combo box ports dot selected item, and we just need to make sure that that goes back as a string. Oops, one too many parentheses there. Semicolon and your bracket, and that's all there is to the property. Now, the baud rate one is a little bit more confusing, strictly because when we do this same thing for the baud rate, we're going to have a string value. So we need to convert that string value to an int 32. So set it up the same way. Public baud rate is an int 32 value. Just call this baud rate. And then in our get routine here, we are going to return. Now remember we said we want to convert it to an int 32. So let's how you convert a string to an int 32. You just type convert dot to int 32, and in parentheses whatever the string is going to be. Now the string is going to be this dot cb baud try this again to get the drop down. There we go. Wasn't getting the drop down for a minute there. We want selected item, and we want to make this to string. We need two parentheses there, semicolon, and the end of our line. And there you go. Now we have our two properties set up, so we just need to go into our instance and get them. So go into our instance and then scroll down to our setup. Now in here I believe you guys have we just put a sentence in there saying that we have to get our values. I got rid of it I think when I was doing some testing. So what we're saying here, if somebody clicks on the OK button, let's get the port name and let's get the selected baud rate. So in order to do that, we're just going to set this mydata.port name. That was supposed to be port name. There you go. we're going to set that equal to our dialog object dot port name. And that is going to return the string for the port name. And then you just simply do the same thing for our baud rate. Equals dialog dot baud rate. And it's simple as that. Now, at this point, we should be able to, I got to close out of here so we can build it. We should be able to build the project. And then open up our Vixen application, and we should be able to save the values. So we go into configure output controllers. Here's our output module controller. Let's configure the controller. I was playing around. This is going to be empty for you, but we can set this to COM1. Let's set this to 19.2. Click OK. Now, if this worked, we should be able to totally get out of our application there, go back in, and we should have the same values set. Excuse the sniffles, I believe I'm getting a cold. Go into configure, we have COM1 and 19.2. Now, the only nice thing I think we should do before we move on is when we first set up a controller, we click Add New Controller, select our output module, click OK. At this point, since our COM port is not set up, we should have it automatically pop up with the setup dialog box so that we can fill it in. So let's get rid of this. And so let's tell Vixen to go ahead and do that. In order to do that, it's very simple. What you do is you go into your instance class, and there are a couple more methods that you can override. One is called start, which as soon as your output module starts up, start is called. One is called stop, which is when your output module stops. And the other one we just have to cover real quick is one called is running. Now, let's go ahead and override our public override. We'll do our start method. You see start pops up down there. And here you have, it fills in base.start. Now, KC recommends that if you override start, you should also override stop. And he also recommends that either you override the isRunning method or you make sure that you call the base start, the base class of the start and stop method. That's how we're going to handle it right here. So just make sure you leave this base.start in there. And while we're at it, since KC suggested it, let's just go ahead and public override stop. Okay, so now they are both overridden. Just make sure you always keep that base.start and the base.stop in there. That will prevent some weird things going on. What that does in the background, Vixen sets the isRunning variable, and leaving that base.start and the base.stop takes care of it in the background. So all we want to do here is in the start method, we want to basically have it say, okay, setup has not been run yet, so let's open it up. Now, how do we know if setup hasn't been run? The easiest way in our case is the port name will still be set to null, because if you remember in our myData object, we did not declare a value for that. So we can just simply say if myData object dot port name is equal to null, we just want it to run the setup method, and that takes care of that. So at this point, we should be ready to go. We should be able to build the project. Go into our Vixen application. Then once that opens up, we should be able to configure output controllers. And let's add a new controller. Our output module controller, click OK. Boom. Automatically comes up with our setup dialog. Now you might want to make it so that people have to absolutely, set this to a COM port before making the OK available. I'm not going to go into it that far at this point. I think you get the point of it. So click OK. And we can go in here and give it a couple outputs. Let's make it a little different. Click OK. And we're all set.